If you read my reply to comments here on YouTube, I say a lot that you have a good camera, but what makes it great is the lenses. To photograph the Milky Way isn't much of an exception, of course. To start, it's very important that you know the basics of lenses, okay? So watch that video beforehand. Also, it's very important how to photograph the Milky Way. So if you want the gear to do a job, you need to know how that job works. There we go. So there is another video up there. With that on, you must think on long term and ask the following 4 questions. What is your budget? Is my objective to become a professional photographer or an advanced amateur photographer? Will I change the camera system or the sensor size in the future? Will I use this lens for another type of photography, like landscape? After replying to these questions, let's tackle the most important thing about lenses, is the aperture. In all astrophotography, we are battling to achieve as much as possible of photons or light to reach the sensor in the camera. Very important, the faster, the wider, the smaller number of aperture, the better. Also, that means that it can get expensive, but to start, f2.8 or higher, the better, okay? If you are just starting and your kit lens is f3.5, it's okay, it's good enough to start, but if you are buying a new lenses to do a good job, well, go for it, go for one lens that has 2.8 or higher, okay? Next is the field of view. Not as important as aperture, but in generally very important as well. The field of view is closely related for the well-known 500 rule or NPF rule, and I'll talk about that on that video, but basically these rules determine that the wider is your lens, the more field of view is your lens, the longer can be the shutter speed without having any start rails or motion blur of the rotation of the Earth or something like that, okay? And the Milky Way, well, it's quite big, it crosses the sky almost like that, so a wider angle also will be better because of that. In conclusion, my advice is wider than 30 millimeters. So if you can reach 24, 14, 15 millimeters, even better, okay? For example, the lens that I use, this one is 14 millimeters f2.8. Also, I use the Laowa, okay, f2 15 millimeters for the R systems, and for my M system, I use the 7 Artisans 12 millimeters f2.8. Well, the M system is APS-C, so it will be around 20 millimeters equivalent, but really good lens as well. I have really good behind the scenes of the Milky Way with this lens. There you go, some suggestions. So the wider the better. Also, I'm not a great fan of fisheye, so 4 millimeters, 8 millimeters sometimes has way too much of a distortion for my own taste. Yours may vary, so there you go. Next step is to know, will you use a star tracker? If you are using, you might be happy with a lower aperture, and as you are tracking the sky, the limitations of the shutter speed is thrown out of the window, okay? And for that, when I use the star tracker, I managed to use this really cheap, 90 bucks, 85 millimeters f1.8 to photograph this nebula of the horns of the Milky Way. Star tracking is a completely different beast to work, but it's very, very fun if you want to get in that kind of deep space photography, okay? For simplicity, we are going to concentrate on non-track, long exposure. Maybe stacking, you can do stacking with these lenses, no problem, okay? Next, funny enough, is electronics. So, to photograph the Milky Way, everything in the lenses need to be manual. Focus, aperture, stabilization off, okay? So, as long as it doesn't interfere with the fourth question, manual lenses, completely fully manual lenses with no electronics is a good money saver. For example, all the lenses that I have here to photograph the Milky Way has no electronics, has no pins on it to actually communicate with the camera, and they are great. So let's choose some lenses. The lenses that I'm gonna show you are just my thoughts, my suggestions, and only as a reference dash guide, so you can adapt to your needs, like camera, budget, etc. With this, you have to watch some reviews of those specific lenses that you want to choose and take special attention on fringing, vignetting, and lens distortion. And I would love to know on the comments which lenses you will choose and why. And if you can reply my 4 questions as well, excellent, okay? But in this video, I'm going to exemplify 3 types of photographers. First of all, an amateur, just for fun, with no intention of becoming an advanced or pro photographer. So a lens budget of $200. He's gonna use the Canon M100, this puppy over here, with no intentions to replace this camera system, so we're gonna stay on the Canon M, and we'll make as well with a wide angle lens some landscape. Our second example is a photographer, amateur photographer that wants to go pro in the future, so using a Nikon D5600 with a lens budget of $500. So in this case, we're gonna have to choose a lens that will last longer. That means a lens that he can adapt from his DSLR and maybe jump to the Z-mount new mirrorless cameras that is showing up. So he's jumping from a crop sensor to a full frame sensor. So we need to take that into account as well. Also, we'll use the lens to make some landscape. Next is a pro photographer using the Canon R6. Lens budget is $1,000. Also, we'll use the lens to urban landscape photography. Now, $1,000 for a professional photographer isn't as much. Usually we could go jump to $2,000 or $3,000, but I like the challenge, so $1,000 it is. So you meet me here on my computer to check the B&H website. They are not sponsoring or something like that. So let's go to photography, to lenses and mirror lenses. Let's go all the way down to the lens mount and let's select the Canon AF-M. Okay, we don't care about the brand, we want all the brands. And also on features, I'm gonna use f2.8 or faster. It's cool that they have that down here. Now, remember our budget is $200, so a Sigma 16mm f1.4, it's excellent, but it's way off budget. And it's way too expensive for AF-M Canon mount, because you will not adapt this lens to other cameras. For example, the AF lens can be adapted into a M camera, but not the other way around, so there is no adapters for that. The second lens that we have found here is the Canon AF22 f2, so really good aperture as well, and it has manual focus and all of that. It's only $50 over budget, and still it's only 22. And if we do the math, 22 multiplied by 1.6, it's around 35 millimeters. That means that applying the 500 rule, you only have 14-15 seconds of exposure. Not really the ideal lens for the job. What I'm gonna do, it's right here, wide angle. Let's see if this helps. There we go. Now, this lens, it's in the budget, but what I am concerned about is the fish eye. The positive thing is that it brings a ND1000 filter, so to landscape with long exposure, it's excellent. What I don't like is the fish eye lens. So let me just open this, and if I search Artisan f2 fisheye lens on Google, now you can see immediately that it has a bunch of distortion. Some people like it, other people doesn't. I'm not a big fan. Let's go back to it. So no, this one, it's over budget. So yeah, we are finding a lot. No, this one looks pretty damn good. 12 millimeters, f2.8. So with 12 millimeters, you will get around 25 seconds, 26 seconds of shutter speed. So a good long exposure, and f2.8, it's a good aperture as well. The lens that I use is actually this one. I bought it new because I didn't find it in secondhand, and I advise it's a really cool lens to photograph the Milky Way. Now I am seeing another one that it's a little bit more expensive and the exactly same parameters. So it's a good idea to check some reviews from the 7 artisans with the Mikey. It's a good idea to check some reviews comparing these two lenses, just to make sure that you have the best quality as possible. So there you go, a really good two choices right here. So I put side by side the 7 artisans 12mm f2.8 with the Sigma of budget Sigma 16mm f1.4 to compare both of them. So the Sigma, it's double the price, but it has autofocus and the silent one to make videos as well. But f1.4 gives 2 stops of light extra from the f2.8 of the 7 artisans, and that is the main point. So you will use a shorter shutter speed. So this one you will be limited around 19-20 seconds of shutter speed, and this one with 12 millimeters, respecting the 500 rule, would be 26 seconds of shutter speed. This lens, although we need a faster shutter speed, 5-6 seconds, it doesn't make much difference. It compensates with the f.4, and it has autofocus if you want to use it for daily use. But it's the double the price, way more than the double of the price. But for an amateur, maybe $400, it's a little bit too steep. Both of these lenses is good, but the Sigma, it's better. And I imagine if I check some reviews and compare side by side the performance and the quality of these two lenses, well, I'm pretty damn sure that the Sigma will have a sharper and less distortion image than the 7 artisans. But I am using the 12mm f2.8 and I'm getting really good results. For an amateur photographer, honestly, the 7 artisans, it's pretty damn good. So you can explore other lenses, maybe find the Sigma 16mm f2.8 at the second-hand market at the price of a brand new 7 artisans. It's a matter of luck, so yeah, there you go. So I was here on eBay checking some used lenses, and I found out this really great lens for the Milky Way, the Tokina Autofocus 11 to 16mm f2.8. So really great to the Milky Way, but also really great to landscape, because you have a little bit of play with the zoom between 11 to 16mm. The only thing is that you will need to adapt to the Canon M system. You're gonna need an adapter. Like this, they are cheap, around 30 bucks. Just make sure that there is the pins inside of it to communicate between the camera and the lens, and you are good to go, okay? Now this lens is not full frame compatible, it's only APS-C sensors, but damn, it's a really good lens. Also, to reply here to the question of Feltix, he was asking for $600 budget. $600 to start, it's not a small budget, it's actually a really good budget to start. I would save at least $100 here to buy a tripod. If you are shooting at night, you need a good tripod. Now, the camera that I would advise is any of the cameras APS-C, from Sony, from Canon, from Nikon. You are in good hands. The cameras that came out from 5 years until now, they are all good. And if you want to buy secondhand, even better, okay? Now, the lens, the kit lens that comes with those cameras are bullshit, okay? Especially the 18-55mm, they aren't very good, okay? So what I would advise, it's just buy the body, okay, without the kit lens, and buy something like this, the 70-70 f2.8 to f4. You have this for Nikon, Canon, and Sony Alpha, okay, without any problems, and secondhand they are quite cheap. So f2.8 is excellent to night shots, Milky Way as well. Yeah, the only defect is this lens is not great for video, but for the rest, this lens is excellent. If you have some budget, extra budget, the 18-35 f1.8 is excellent as well, but it's a little bit expensive. So next up is an amateur that wants to go pro in the future. Now, if you buy a lens ready for the future, it's my advice, it's better, okay? If you want to go pro, well, let's try to tackle, although $500 is a very short budget, but if you want to go pro, well, let's think about full frame, okay? So full frame will work as well on the D5600, but it's ready when you jump to full frame. So the Nikon D5000 series are DSLRs, so it has a mirror, but if you want to jump for a full frame Z camera in the future, your best bet is to get an adapter. Let's keep that in mind. 35mm f1.8, it's a little bit off budget, but yeah, it has autofocus and stuff like that, but it's not the best option to photograph the Milky Way. Again, here we have the 14mm f2.8 at $300. Now, this lens, I use it, and it's a really good lens to photograph the Milky Way. The only defect that I found on this lens is that it's really hard to put filters in front of it, but it's inside of the budget, okay? Again, f2, 35mm, but in APS-C camera that it's Nikon, it's 1.5 multiplication, it's not the ideal. Now this one, it's $80, a little bit off budget, but if I'm not wrong, this lens has automatic focus, so, and it's an update from the other 14mm. Maybe the elements are better, so you will get a better quality if you can add $80 to over your budget. Now this one, it's in budget. I assume it's all manual lens, and it's 15mm f2.4, so also a pretty damn good lens as well. Let me explore it a little bit. I don't know this lens, I just seen it now. It looks really cool, but it's full frame compatible, it's all manual. If I'm not mistaken, you can add ND filters on the back. Just the numbers, it's almost the same, so you win half a stop with the Iris Firefly lens. You have 14mm, so from 14mm to 15mm, it won't be as much of a difference in the shutter speed, but is way more interesting because how you add filters on the back. Yeah, it's $100 more, but honestly I am quite impressed with this lens and I'm really liking it. There you go, the filters. So you can add the filters on the back, so you can do long exposure, and they are quite cheap and it's inside of your budget. By the numbers, this lens, it's pretty damn good. Now, I advise you again to compare both of them, check reviews and etc. so you do your best choice for you. Let's go with a pro photographer with a very tight budget. $1,000, it's very tight budget for pro photographers, but I like the challenge, okay? So R6, the new R lenses, works really well with wide angle lens. So as the lens is much closer to the sensor, you can build better wide angle lens for that system, okay? I'm gonna select mirrorless lenses, but with the cheap adapter, you can also select DSLR lenses, okay? If you are really in a tight budget, I advise to check out some secondhand markets with DSLR lenses and adapt to your R system or Z system if you are in Nikon, okay? And immediately with a 35mm f1.8. Really good lens, it's a really good option, but yeah, we can go more. And Artisan's this is an interesting lens and very cheap, is a fisheye. Okay, 11 millimeters is it's a fisheye, but it's very interesting. Again, 14 millimeters f2.8, Rockinon, and here we have with the Laowa 15 millimeters f2, and we have another Laowa 12 millimeters f2.8. Now you are figuring out which of these two lenses you want to buy. So both of these lenses are in our budget, but this one has 0D, this one has 0D lens. That means that the distortion will be great on both of them, great. Non-visible on both of them, at least in theory. I already made a review of this lens. What I can see, it will be harder to add some filters on this lens, at least on the front, because it's spherical in the front. And this one, as you can adapt 72 millimeters filter here, it will be easier to add filters for long exposure landscape photography. Now, the big two difference is the aperture and the angle of view. So 15 millimeters will give you around 33 seconds respecting the 500 rule, and the 500 rule on the 12 millimeters will be 42 seconds. Also, the aperture, this one has less one-stop than this one. Now, very important, check some reviews from both of them. I already made one of the Laowa 15mm f2 and I love it to also photography. If you check my Instagram, my recent photos with the Milky Way is from this lens. So both of them are great options, and well, you need to figure which one is the best for you and for your urban landscape photography as well. So Canon AF, it's a good option. Again, if you are with Nikon Z mount, you can choose the old FX lens and use an adapter. You will get an amazing result with those lenses. But there you go. So we jump to here to check what we could find. Now, this is off budget, but in second-hand market, I am pretty damn sure that you can find it for 1,000 bucks. You just need to get the adapter. Here is a good example. So the Sigma 24mm f1.4. So a bunch of light will get on the camera and hit your sensor. 24mm, you are limited a little bit on the shutter speed, but it's a really good lens, and the Sigma art lens has really high quality. So yeah, this is a good option as well, okay? And it's in the budget. Another maybe second-hand option is the Sigma 40mm f1.8. It's $600 off budget, but in second-hand, if you can find it, maybe you will find it at 1,000 bucks. And well, this is an excellent lens for ASA photography. 40mm f1.8. Damn, Sigma, do this for R mount or Z mount, because this lens is amazing. I already did check out some reviews of this lens, and this lens is amazing. And there you go. I hope this video helped you a lot. If it helped and you learned something, please drop a like, comment down below if you have any questions, and subscribe if you want to see more stuff like this. I am Miguel, until next time, see ya.